Hi, I'm Professor Chris Peck. I'm the Chair of the Board of Directors of the Australian Dental Council. I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land from which I'm joining this conversation. I'm on the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past and present. So I'd like to first formally welcome you to the Australian Dental Council's virtual member forum. We're continuing with the virtual tradition established over the past few years. COVID's still unfortunately active, and we remain appropriately cautious and felt one more year of recorded updates was warranted for safety. So thank you for joining me and our Chief Executive Officer of the Australian Dental Council, Narelle Mills, as we have a chat about the achievements over the past year.
Thanks, Chris. Yes, and certainly while we've come out of COVID, it hasn't gone away. It is still affecting the practicalities of travel, and we've taken a lot of measures in the organisation to stay safe and make sure that that's part of our regular practice and respect for each other. So we've built COVID policies into our examination and accreditation activities with our key stakeholders, our candidates and our education providers in mind, to ensure that we've continued to be responsive to this changing environment once again over the past 12 months. We've also put in the hard work that so many other organisations have also done to care for our staff and value our team while we all worked from home again in late 2021 and then again during winter of this year.
Yes, it's been some big changes over the past few years, and specifically I just wanted to mention that last year we've had a really continued focus to expand on the role of our People and Culture Committee. And this has evolved from our original nominations committee, and it's moved beyond that simple succession planning for the board to a broader consideration of people across the Australian Dental Council. So although we understood the Australian Dental Council need to focus on its people, the focus and attention has been central to the activities of this committee and the new directorate within the organisation.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. It really was a real way for us to build capacity around our culture within the organisation and with the board backing that, and to help attract and retain staff and attract new talent to the board and committees as well, particularly in the employment market that's happening around us as well. So we're really rebuilding the workplace culture after many years, particularly based in Melbourne here, of remote working. Our examinations team, of course, has been working on site whenever possible during lockdowns to continue to run our critical examinations. But we're definitely a hybrid working organisation now, with most people here a couple of days a week or 3 or 4 days a week, and it's a really great change. As part of that shift back to working from the office, we've built in some new types of leave and acknowledged that we've just, changed the way of working, and probably some of that for a really positive outcome, I think, for the organisation. We're rewarding people for the length of service. We've had some people that have ticked over 10 years, 5 years, 6 years during the lockdown as well, and that's obviously something to really be proud of. People staying within an organisation and really keeping their contribution high on our minds as well. Chris, as chair of the board, what have you observed to be some of the achievements of the organisation?
Yeah, thanks, Narelle. And I think just to echo what you've said, I've been incredibly proud, and I can say this on behalf of the board, of the ability of the Australian Dental Council to pivot, particularly over the past 3 years. And talking to board directors who are on other boards and working certainly in other areas, they've been suitably impressed. And whilst there's been large staff turnover everywhere, they've been very impressed at the retention mechanisms that you've put in place, and the morale and the adherence to values of the Australian Dental Council by all staff. So, look, I think just on reflection, I was incredibly fortunate to chair the review of the professional competencies of the newly qualified dental practitioner. And this was an incredible piece of work which brought together a diverse stakeholder group. And it really showed, I think, really the reason of being for the Australian Dental Council, which has led but does not, of course, own the competencies, is more of a custodian of the competencies, has actually led that stakeholder group to actually ensure that we have contemporary and appropriate competencies for the oral health needs of all our Australians. I think it's important that those oral health needs are linked, of course, to the general health needs as well. So the Australian Dental Council and indeed the stakeholders should be really proud of the final outcome, which saw the consolidation of the competencies into a single document for all dental professions. We've reinforced the importance of inter and intra-professional practice, and there's a greater focus on the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health and priority populations at greater risk of poor oral and general health. So that was an incredible highlight. I think also the Australian Dental Council, with its launch of its Reflect Reconciliation Action Plan in May of this year, it was an incredible and major achievement for the organisation. Cultural safety is a key focus for the board, and as chair, it's fantastic to see this being embedded in all levels of decision-making in the organisation. Look, from my perspective, this work aligns well with work you've been leading across all accreditation authorities, Narelle.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And, I've been leading work across the 15 accreditation authorities as part of our membership of the Health Professions Accreditation Collaborative Forum for quite a few years now. So we've got a real opportunity to learn from each other and work together to embed cultural safety in health practitioner programs, education programs and training programs within the country. And so one of the more contemporary pieces of work that we're doing is actually looking at developing a common assessor training, so for our accreditation teams, and having kind of interdisciplinary training with our assessor groups to learn about what are we looking for when we go into an education program, what does good look like in cultural safety, and how can we raise the bar collectively together around doing better just generally for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander population groups. So it's a quite a ambitious but quite exciting and quite impactful program if we can get it up and running next year is the expected timeline.
I've been very impressed, Narelle, with you and particularly in, as you just said, your role as chair of the Health Professions Accreditation Collaborative Forum. And that's in its second year under your leadership. And it's really a mark of respect for your leadership. And it has a great flow-on effects for the Australian Dental Council. It positions the role of dental health within general health. So I realise it's been taxing on your time, but thank you very much on behalf of the board.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Look, I'm really enjoying kind of being the chair of the forum, but it's actually changing a lot. And I've been working in the scheme for almost 10 years now, and the way accreditation is talked about within the scheme is actually evolving. And there's been a real increased focus on health workforce and what is the role of accreditation in producing the health workforce of the future. And so we're moving away from necessarily the kind of outcomes of the accreditation systems review, which were about effectiveness and efficiency and transparency, to more of the other parts of the objectives and guiding principles of the scheme, which is about innovation and responsiveness and access to care, etc. So it is actually quite a change, and the role of the chair of the forum is changing. Accreditation is being talked about in all different areas and not just in sort of single working group committees. So it's actually increasing the profile of accreditation and our responsibilities, which is great. It's a real positive outcome, I think, for accreditation in the scheme. Chris, as you complete 9 years on the board, I'd like to really acknowledge your contribution and thank you for the support that you've provided to me over the last 12 months as chair, but also for your stewardship over the 9 years that you have been on the board and your, before that as well, your contribution to the ADC. What are some of your reflections of your time on the ADC board, and what do you think is the focus of the board going forward?
Yeah, thanks, Narelle, and particularly thanks for those kind words. It's been an absolute privilege to be on the board and help steer the Australian Dental Council. I mean, over the past decade, the Australian Dental Council has changed significantly. I mean, it's always been incredibly strong in its role of accreditation of dental programs and assessment of international dental practitioners. But what I've noticed, particularly in the last few years, it's now arguably one of the leading accreditation authorities in Australia across all health professions. And as you've outlined with your work in the collaborative forum and work within other government agencies, it shows that the Australian Dental Council is regarded very highly by our stakeholders, broadly speaking, regarded very highly internationally. And I think I'd just like to emphasise one of the comments you made, in that we have a very important role to play in cultural safety. And I believe now with the implementation of a number of the initiatives under your leadership, we're well on the way with that. The board's changed its membership over the past 9 years in quite profound ways. There's been a large focus in diversity and inclusion, and that's certainly helped with our skills-based board. It's helped with the decision making. It's helped with looking at risk management and development of strategy. We've recently reviewed and made changes to our constitution, and I think that's timely because times have changed, and COVID has actually allowed us in many ways to reflect on that constitution, broadly governance. As well, last year we've modified our board charter, and we're going through an external evaluation as we speak. So I think they're really important areas to set the board and the Australian Dental Council up for success in the future. I think also an exciting part in the strategic area is a focus on business development opportunities. And whilst we're exploring that, I'm always encouraged to see how, whether it's other health professions within Australia or actually internationally, they come knocking on our door, so to speak, to learn about the experience and expertise of our council and accreditation. So I'm certainly a proponent for the direction that we're heading, but also see that we've naturally evolved into, I believe, a much more efficient and effective organisation. And on behalf of the whole board, I know they're proud of both you, your leadership, your senior leadership team, and all staff in general. So as I move on, so to speak, the Australian Dental Council board is in great hands, with current Deputy Chair Dr. Chris Burke moving into the role of Chair, and Dr. Janet Pruce stepping into the Deputy Chair role. I do want to acknowledge that there are two others who are leaving the board now, Dr. David Sykes and Mr. Tony Evans, and thank them, of course, for their contribution. So we three will be leaving after the AGM this year. And that over the past approximate 12 months, there's been a 50% change in board directors. And I think that's a very healthy position for us as we move forward with different strategic endeavours. It's great to see that the new 3 directors who will be coming on at the end of our November meeting include Jamie Williamson, an Aboriginal man, Dr. Nazar Al-Barbari, who's got enormous wealth of experience both in the dental profession but also in commercial endeavours, and Dr. Kate Amos, who's a rural practitioner and has had experience with membership organisations. And so I certainly welcome them coming onto the board. Narelle, thank you very much for your leadership over the 12 months. I feel very confident that the organisation's in exceptionally good hands, and on behalf of the board, thank you.
Thanks, Chris. And once again, thank you for your contribution to the ADC and the support that you've given to me over the past 12 months as chair, but also before that as a board member. Thank you.